My name is Jim Lingle. I was conceived in Detroit. I was born in Altus because there was no doctor in Coal Hill. The doctor was smoking a cigar. He made my dad be in the room to see what misery he had caused. Then we went to my grandparents' farm where there was no running water, no electricity. We cooked on the wood stove and heated with coal. Then we moved to Alma, then to Ozark, and then to Rogers when I was 8 years old. My parents were Greer and Claudia Lingle. Dad was superintendent of schools here. My mom taught second grade. They grew up in Coal Hill, and they eloped when they were 17 and were never legally married. But they stayed together for 60 some odd years.
Um, so tell me, what do you remember as a young boy coming to Rogers? Where did you live and what was it like?
Um, it was kind of scary for me. I had all my friends were in Ozark, and I didn't want to move, and I claimed I hated it for the first couple of years. But Rogers was a lot bigger. Believe it or not, it had 5,000 people, and it was a rough move, but I wouldn't trade it for anything now. I wouldn't want to grow up anywhere else.
Uh, who were some of the kids that you met whenever you were first came here? Who were some of your first friends?
Scott Phones, David Swearingen, John Sampier, Carol Shell, David Mackey. I could go on and on. We were from the third grade all the way through high school. John Sampier was a politician from the sixth grade on. He was always running for student council and class president, and he won most of the time. And John was a good fishing buddy and hunting buddy back when I used to hunt. We were out hunting once and he missed a shot, and I laughed at him and told him I didn't think he could hit my hat if I threw it in the air, and he said, "Go ahead and try it." And I threw it in the air. He let it fall to the ground and just blew it to bits. So that's John Sampier. I went to school first at what was called Central Ward Elementary. It's where Tillery School is now on Poplar Street. After that, I went to the big high school that is no longer there. It's on Walnut Street where the administration building is. And in my seventh grade year, that's the last year they had grades 7 through 12 all in the same building. And that was quite an experience. I was a 97-pound weakling, and all these big kids ran over me in the hall. Even if they weren't trying to be mean, they just couldn't see me. So that was an experience. Then the next 2 years were at that school. Then grades 10 through 12, I was in the, quote, new high school, which is now Heritage. It was a pain. People, being a superintendent's kid, you were always blamed if school wasn't called off when it snowed. Dad made me answer the phone when it snowed, so I got sick of that. But overall, it wasn't bad. I mean, I wasn't picked on per se unless we had school when we shouldn't. It was on the radio each morning. Smokey Dacus was a local icon, and he would do the morning radio shows, and he and Dad would collaborate, and Smokey would announce it, but most people couldn't wait. And they didn't have answering machines, so somebody had to pick up or just keep ringing, and that was me.
What else was different about school back in those days?
Well, all the teachers carried paddles, just kind of like an infantry officer or a policeman in the halls. They used to beat on us occasionally, usually not brutally.
After high school, when you graduated from high school in Rogers, what did you do next?
I went to the University of Arkansas after high school and studied there 4 years. I got a degree in political science and a minor in math. And after that, or do you want to know more about college? Okay. After that, I taught eighth grade math at Bentonville Middle School for a year. After after Bentonville Middle School, I went into the Peace Corps, trained in Hawaii for 3 months, and then lived in the Philippines for 2 years. In the Philippines, I taught some English and some math, and was mainly a pet American, but it was a good experience. After the Peace Corps, I traveled around Southeast Asia and then stayed in Japan for 6 months. Then I moved back to Northwest Arkansas after Japan, and there's a year that's just kind of missing. I don't know what happened. I just traveled around and did that sort of thing. And then I went to law school. Started in 73 and finished in 76 and started practicing in Rogers with Howard Slinkard in the fall of 76. The two judges, primary judges in Benton County were Judge Bill Enfield and Judge Ted Coxey. Coxey was a chancellor. Back then, they divided the circuit courts by jurisdiction, and circuit courts heard, quote, legal cases. Chancery courts heard equity cases, and that division was mainly based on history. You had to kind of know what kind of case you had and what category it would fall in. But if you filed in the wrong one, they just transfer it. But divorces and wills were done in Chancery Court. Anything that required a jury trial was in circuit court. When I first started practicing, it was before title companies, and we used to read abstracts on any land transaction we had. And we'd draw out the property and read every page from the time of the initial patent up to the present, and give an opinion to the buyer about what was wrong with the title, and the seller would have to clear that up before the closing. But that's gone to the wayside. It's all title insurance now. With the lawyer doing the title opinion, if something went wrong, you could sue the lawyer for malpractice. Now, the title insurance companies do it, and if they make a mistake and there's a flaw in the title, they take care of it. They pay for it. I think people were better off with lawyers, actually, because, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of times the title opinion or the title companies don't do a very thorough job. They gamble. This looks pretty good, but we were really, really careful. And I mean, the system's working well now, but I just thought the other system was better. But of course, I think everything that I did was better. But if I had a few title opinions and a couple of divorces, that would make my month when I first started practicing. And I charged $35 per hour. And I thought that was outrageous, and it probably was.
So who were some of the other lawyers that were practicing here in Rogers?
Jeff Duty, who's an icon. He was one of my mentors. Claude Williams, Don Kendall, Steve Geigel, Hardy Croxton, Gene Kelly, J. Wesley Sampier, Bill Honey. And I think that's about all there were in Rogers. Ralph Williams, Steve Sawyer. There were a lot of Asa Hutchinson was practicing in Bentonville when I started. Gene Caulfield, Lloyd Burrow, and Paul Davidson started about the same time I did. And David Klinger started a year or so before I did. He was Howard Slinkard's partner before I was. I've never seen a better prosecutor. He was really good. He was thorough. He was prepared. He took no prisoners. He did not put a single witness on the stand unless he had thoroughly prepared them, both for his direct examination, tell him what he was going to ask, and they would practice. And then he would prepare them for cross-examination, and sometimes coach them a little bit on what to say. If this happens, you can say this. Not encourage them not to tell the truth, but based on what you told me, use this answer. And once there was a child abuse case, rape case, I don't remember, but I think John Everett was the lawyer. And
Sunshine School?
yes, yes. And John was having trouble scoring any points, and he finally just decided to shut up. He said, "Well, thank you, Stephen," or whatever his name was, "for your story." Stephen said, "That's no story. That's the truth." Got to repeat the story again, and that was due to Klinger's preparation. When I first started practicing law, the county judges had jurisdiction over what we then called bastardy cases. They were paternity cases, and they had no legal training. As you know, a county judge is a county administrator, but they were given jurisdiction over those cases, and they said this was before DNA or blood tests, and they would decide by the shape of the child's ears a lot of times. If the ears looked like the dad's, that's the way it was.
Do you remember the days before you had a public defender system?
Yes.
Talk about that.
The judges would appoint lawyers to represent indigent defendants, and the young lawyers got more than their share of them. He gave the older ones a break, but I got appointed to a lot of cases, and usually didn't get paid anything. If so, it wasn't very much. W.H. Taylor and I tried a capital murder case, and it was a lot of work. And I don't know how long the trial lasted, but at least a week, and then we had the appeal. I think we got paid $2,000 to split. I think that's right. And we lost the case, which we should have, but we got it reversed on appeal. And the day the case came out, I was walking across the square in Bentonville, and Judge Enfield drove by and rolled down his window, and he said, "Jim," I thought, "Oh no." he's gonna yell at me. He's gonna say awful things. He said, "Nice job," and then drove off. So Judge Enfield could be hard on you, but he supported his lawyers. If you did something right, he let you know that too, and he was a fine guy.
What about some of the lawyers? Did you ever go to court and watch other cases or watch cases?
Yes.
Who are some of the lawyers, defense attorneys that stand out that you remember?
Bill Putman in Fayetteville was an excellent defense attorney, and I would follow him around and watch his cases. And I remember once he told me to come over and look at something before a trial, and he was holding something. I noticed his hand was shaking a little bit, and I said, "Bill, are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, just a little bit nervous." And I said, "Do you mean you still get nervous?" And he said, "If you ever quit getting nervous, it's time to hang it up." And I think he was right. I also got the chance to see Morris Dees of the Southern Poverty Law Center try part of a case. A couple of black inmates had killed some deputies in the Benton County Jail, and Morris came up, and he was really high tech. He had an artist there sketching the jurors and their reactions. He couldn't have a camera, but she would do quick sketches, and they would review those before they picked a juror. And he was very impressive. They ended up settling the case, I think, before opening statements, and I think he saved their lives. Yeah, one of the cases that probably made my career more than any other was a ticket a couple got for letting their property grow up in weeds. They had a little farmhouse with 40 acres, and the town grew up around it, and the city wanted them to mow it, and they didn't want to because of the birds. And I got Ellen Turner, who's with the Audubon Society, to look at the place, and she got it declared a bird sanctuary. And we put up the sign, and she came and testified as an expert witness, and we won that case. And after that, I got a call from some people wanting to fight a landfill over in Carroll County. And I said, I don't know anything about landfills. They said, the Audubon Society recommended you. We want you. Okay, so I tried that case, lost it. Got another landfill case, won it. And so that led to those two cases. Then I got a call from a man over in Green Forest that said that Tyson and the city had polluted their wells. And they said, the Audubon Society's recommended you. And I said, no, I know about birds. I know about the landfills. I don't know anything about the Clean Water Act. They talked me into taking the case. We tried that case for 6 weeks in Fort Smith, and that's the longest trial I've ever had, and we finally won. And there are stories I could tell you all day, but I'm not going to do that. Then there was the Frankie Parker murder case that I tried with WH. I have never felt so much hate in a room. I mean, the people that he killed were well loved, and it was just a senseless thing. But the case I got the most threats over was when I took Bibles away from small children. A couple came to me. They had a child in the Gravett Elementary School, and they were Christians, they were Lutherans, but there was a fundamentalist Bible school going on in the second and third grades, I think, and we sued, and we eventually won and got it stopped. But my mother even got a letter asking how she could raise a monster like me for doing that case. But then I redeemed myself, and I represented the Ku Klux Klan. I can explain. I did it for the ACLU. The Klan wanted to adopt a highway, first mile coming in from Missouri and into Harrison. And the highway department wouldn't let them do it. We sued them, we won, and they got their sign up that said, this mile of highway is adopted by the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. They didn't last over a couple of months. People threw so much trash out they couldn't keep up with it. So that was an exercise in futility, but it was kind of fun. I made the Arsenio Hall show, and he said he was all for it. He thought they ought to be able to pick up that white trash. Well, you have to believe in the principle that everyone is entitled to a defense, guilty or not, and they're entitled to a lawyer, even if you don't agree with what they've done or what they stand for. And the issue in the Ku Klux Klan case was the First Amendment. Can the state offer these signs to people they agree with, but not people they don't agree with? And the correct answer should be no. And that's why the ACLU took it, and that's why I took it. The pollution case that I mentioned against Tyson, the city of Green Forest. And then I got another call. We hear you sued Tyson. Yes, I did. Well, we're poultry growers, and we need for you to sue them. And I said, I know about landfills. I know about the Clean Water Act. I don't know anything about chickens or chicken contracts. But they talked me into it, and I ended up with my partner, Clay Fulcher, and Peter Cumpy from Little Rock, ended up taking a lot of poultry cases against a lot of different companies. We had them all over the southeastern United States, representing growers who had been cheated on the weight of their birds or engaged in other unfair practices. So at one time, I was one of the premier chicken lawyers in the United States.
So what was the resolution of the Tyson chicken case?
We um, we won almost all of those cases with maybe one or two exceptions, but we had them against Tyson, George's, you name a poultry company, chicken or turkey, Swift Eckrich, and some in Georgia and South Carolina, North and South Carolina too, and some in Texas. But in most cases, we got a good result for the growers. They weren't forced to go out of business as they were getting ready to do, and we got some good verdicts. I sued George's, and Mr. George and his son came to every deposition, and I started to like them, and I didn't want to because we were on the other side, but they had not, I really believe they did not know what had been going on and how the growers were being treated. And they ended up settling the case with us, and when my father died, Mr. George sent flowers to the funeral. Class act.
Let's talk about the city of Rogers. When you came here, as a kid, what was the town like? What do you remember about the town back in those days?
It was a lot bigger than Ozark, which had about 1,900 people, I think. But Rogers had about, I think, 5,200, and Bentonville was smaller than that. Springdale was about the same size. Fayetteville maybe 20,000. I don't know, including students. But it was just a small town. When I graduated from high school in '65, it only had a little over 7,000. So it was just a small Arkansas town. There were no black people at all. I think there was a family in Bentonville, but people claimed it was a sundown town. And I heard that when Fats Domino came to play, he got some threatening calls. But I never saw a sign outside of town. People swear they saw it, but I don't think it ever existed. When I first came here, the big industry was vinegar. We had one of them, I think, was the largest apple cider vinegar plant in the world. So apples were king. We had an apple festival. There were apple orchards all over the place. And then sometime when I was in Little League, they started talking about chicken. And they had a chicken eating week. And they barbecued chicken for the Little League. And then suddenly, I'm sure it wasn't sudden, but the apples were gone and chickens were all over the place. So that was a big deal. And then, maybe this was about the same time as the chickens. Daisy Manufacturing moved in from Michigan and provided a lot of jobs and brought in a lot of new people. Some of them talked funny and had different ideas. Some of them were Republicans. And when I started practicing law, there was not a single Republican in the Benton County courthouse. They were all Democrats, and that's all just completely flip-flopped. But Bentonville, Rogers, Lowell, Springdale, and Fayetteville were separate towns. There were miles of farmland and open space in between them, and not anymore. It's just incredible. And of course, Rogers was dry. My dad used to say the difference between a dry county and a wet county in Arkansas is you can get a drink on Sunday in a dry county because they had all these private clubs. I don't know if that was true or not, but oh, and let me talk about another sheriff, Mean Joe Means. Have you ever heard of Joe Means? He was sheriff for a while. He ran on the proposition that the only crime he'd been guilty of was moonshining, which may be true. He was later Rogers chief of police, and then when I started practicing law, he'd stop by and visit sometimes. And he grew his own tobacco, twist, chewing tobacco, and he said, "You want to try this?" And I couldn't back down, so I said, "Okay." And so he gave me that twist, and I started to break a piece off. He said, "Nah, what's the matter?" He said, "Bite it off." Bite it off? Why do you want me to bite it off? Because I know your teeth hadn't been in your ass. That was Joe. So I bit it off. Keith Ferguson and Leon Clinton were state troopers and really good ones. The Republican Party were actually reformers at first. Some good friends of mine, Beck Scott, Bob Scott, Jim Caldwell, who was a Church of Christ minister and was in the state Senate, they took on the quote old guard and won. And so that got a foothold. Then, as you mentioned, people started moving in, a lot of retirees from quote up north in Bella Vista. And Daisy brought some people from Michigan. Oh, and the elephant in the room, Walmart. Walmart brought people from all over. And that's where a lot of the population growth came from too. It was just a lot more eclectic place. But the other true thing is some of the Democrats, when they saw the writing on the wall, just switched. They became Republicans. The Klingers did that. Tom Keith, who's a dear friend of mine and a judge here for years, did that. But Tom, when he retired, admitted, he said, "Yeah, I ran as a Republican to get elected, but I've always been a Democrat." But that was Tom.
Who are some of the ones that didn't ever switch?
No one who continued to get elected. Let's see. Mac Luffman was a judge here and a really smart guy and a really great judge. And my father was his campaign manager, and he lost to Don Huffman, whose slogan was, "It's Huffman with an H." And Huffman was not qualified to be a judge. I'm sorry. And I probably shouldn't say that, but he was a nice guy, but he just shouldn't have been a judge. And that's when we realized you got to have the R beside your name to get elected.
So, talk about your ventures into political life. What did you run for, and how'd that go?
I looked really good losing the second time. Didn't look good losing the first time. The first time, I heard Hammersmith was going to retire, and I got in the Democratic primary too late, and I had a good experience. I got to travel all around and meet a lot of people, and it was fun. But David Stewart beat me in the primary, and then, of course, Hammersmith beat him. The next race was for state senate. It was run against Joe Yates, who was both a state senator and a registered lobbyist for the Poultry Federation. And we recorded his home answering machine that said, "This is Joe Yates of the Arkansas Poultry Federation," and then did some cute stuff after that. But I think I was ahead for a while. People told me I was, and I believed it. But in the last 2 weeks, I've talked about some of these cases. They put the stuff on the radio that that I was the ACLU's main lawyer, and the ACLU is for legalized drugs, legalized prostitution, child pornography, and all that. And I didn't have the money to rebut it, so I lost it. And I want to say something else too about lawyers and judges. Lawyers get a bad rap. Um, I could count on one hand the lawyers I have dealt with that I don't trust. I have very rarely had one be dishonest with me, and they're, for the most part, they're conscientious and do a good job for their clients. Same about judges. We have some really good judges in Benton County, always have. There have been some exceptions, but I have never known one who was corrupt. There are some that weren't very smart and some that were lazy, but not many of those. But I have never worried about getting stabbed in the back. They're good people. Benton County was one of the best places to grow up in you could imagine. I loved it. Now, I'm not sure I know Benton County. It's so eclectic. We have so many different people from so many different places. And I miss the old Benton County, but the experience is a whole lot richer with all these new people here, I think. I mean, you have all sorts of restaurants and theater, and it's just, the Waltons, especially Alice, have brought the museum here, and there's just not much you can't find here. My favorite thing about Benton County is the people and how it has. I said I didn't know Benton County anymore, but that's not true. It's I love it that it's maintained some of its character and what it used to be, while adding all these cultural gifts that we've received, and the diversity and the things that the population has added.